afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining Oasis Solutions for today's Sage 100 Tips and Tricks webinar. Today we're going to focus on inventory, and since we're not too far from year end, today we're going to focus on physical count entry and kind of talking about how to prepare for physical count, how to process a physical count, and some of the things to watch for during that process. So again, welcome everyone. This is a pre-recorded session. However, you are able to ask questions during this presentation through the Q&A. The facilitator will monitor those questions, and you will receive a reply to all of your questions. You'll either receive an answer, a written answer during this session, or you will receive a written answer after the session. But feel free to ask questions, and we will get those addressed for you. So today we are going to talk about inventory, and we're going to talk about physical count. So there are some things that you need to do to prepare for physical count. So the first thing that you need to do is, if you use the valuation of either FIFO or LIFO on any of your items. Now you may have a combination that you use FIFO, but some of your items are serialized or have lot numbers. That's okay. But if any of your items have the valuation of FIFO or LIFO, the first thing that you need to do is you need to check and see if you have any negative tiers. And a negative tier occurs on a FIFO or LIFO item if you have over distributed. So maybe you have 3 on hand, but you went ahead and sold 10 because you knew you were going to be getting those in. That creates a negative tier because you've over distributed. Now we're not going to get into today all of the GL aspect or what happens because obviously if you've got huge negative tiers, it's going to have an impact on your inventory valuation. GL wise, there's going to be a posting to an inventory adjustment account. But we do have documentation available that talks about the negative tier report, the impact, and how it affects your general ledger. We also can work with you, any member of our help desk team can also work with you to help you better understand it. Take a look, if you want us to review the report with you and, kind of talk about how to avoid such things in the future, we certainly are glad to help you with that. So in inventory management, under period end, you have a negative tier report. So you want to, and again, if you don't use FIFO or LIFO, you can skip this step. So you're going to go into that negative tier report, and you can run it for just a particular warehouse. So let's say that you have multiple warehouses and you're only going to do a physical count on the warehouse 001. You could choose just that particular warehouse. For today's purposes, we're going to go ahead and do all the warehouses and preview the report. So you can see that I have quite a large negative tier issue. For instance, this is over distributed by 350, which has a huge tier value. Hopefully you're not going to run into that issue. If you may run into a situation though that maybe you're new to using Sage, or maybe you've been using Sage for a while. No one ever had mentioned to you about looking at this negative tier report or cleaning up your inventory. So if you run this report and it's huge and you're trying to figure out the best way to manage it, again, get with our help team and we can walk you through the process. So I'm going to take a look at this report, and it's just one page, and it shows everything that there is a negative tier for. So after you run that report and you see what's there, and you've kind of taken a look at it, and you're in agreement with what is on this report, the next thing that you're going to do is go in and do the negative tier adjustment. And it's going to ask you a posting date. Now my demo data is in a future date, so I'm going to go ahead and just run it with that date. You obviously want to make sure that you're posting to your correct GL period and the inventory posting date as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to preview this. And you're going to see where there was an adjustment made. And normally, and forgive me because my demo data obviously is a little messed up, but it is going to provide you with the total where it's going to be an adjustment. And I'm not sure why this one isn't looking correct. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of here, and we'll go ahead and just update this. It's going to come up and ask if you want to do the daily transaction register. You do want to go ahead and take that step because that is what is going to update your general ledger. Okay, we're going to do preview that. And because that report has $0 on it, then there is nothing here to post. If that negative tier adjustment had dollars on it, that's where you're going to get a GL entry. And the GL entry, it's going to be an offset between your inventory GL account and your inventory adjustment GL account. So again, apologize that that report didn't go exactly as planned, but sometimes that happens when you mess with your demo data a lot. So, but again, this is step one. If you FIFO and LIFO, you're going to run that negative tier report, you're going to review it, and then in order to update that, you need to do the negative tier adjustment and get all of those entries updated. Excuse me. So that is the first step that you need to take before you do anything related to your physical count. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that any entry in any modules that integrate with inventory are updated. So, for instance, an example would be sales order. So in sales order, you would want to make sure that if you have anything in invoice data entry, that you print those invoices, get them taken care of, and that you actually update your sales register, your sales journal, and your daily transaction register. You don't want to have any open, unposted invoices prior to doing your physical count. If you use the purchase order module, you would want to make sure that if you are doing a receipt of goods, that receipt of goods is updated prior to starting your physical count. Any other modules that may impact inventory, such as maybe job cost, anything like that, you also want to make sure that all of those transactions are posted prior to starting your inventory. Now, with that being said, once we go through the next steps that I'm going to show you, you do not have to shut down your business while you're doing your physical count. You can continue issuing quotes, issuing sales orders, doing sales order invoices for selling product. You can do receipt of goods and bring things in, but you only want to do that after we have frozen our inventory, and then people can continue with your day-to-day operations. So step one is deal with your, step 1 is to deal with your negative tiers. Step 2 is to make sure that any modules that have transactions that affect inventory are updated. Example, sales order invoices, purchase order receipt of goods. Make sure all of those are updated. And then at this point, you're ready to start your physical count. And there's a couple of ways to do inventory counts in Sage. A few years ago, they added the card count option as well, because a lot of people do card counts. Today, we're going to focus on the physical count worksheet. If you do card count and you're interested in seeing how that is processed, we do have a recorded webinar from 2020 related to inventory physical count, and it does go through card count. So you can find that at our website at oasisky.com. So to begin your physical count, you're going to go into your physical count worksheet. And you're going to have several options. So down at your selection criteria, you may just be doing one warehouse. So if you are, you would want to make sure that you said equal to and picked the warehouse that you will be doing the inventory for. If you have multiple warehouses and you're doing all of them at the end of the year, you just, can set that to all. You can tell it to include the lot or serial tiers. This part is new, so is fairly new on what you want to include or exclude from freezing your inventory. And I probably would include everything. Then you have report options, and you have a couple of options here. You have print your worksheet and freeze your items only, or clear frozen items. When you are beginning your inventory, you want to do the print worksheet and freeze items. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to generate a worksheet that you can use for your physical count process, and it's going to freeze your inventory items. So once those items are frozen, and not until, once they're frozen, your team can continue working in purchase order, sales order, anything that affects inventory, because you've frozen those items. So it's kind of taking a snapshot, and it knows that you're doing a snapshot as of this moment, regardless of what happens later today or tomorrow. And when you enter your physical count, if there have been sales orders, if there have been invoices where you've sold things, if you've done receipt of goods, it's going to know to add those to or subtract from your physical count, if that makes any sense, so that your inventory accounts will be correct at the end. So again, it's real important to make sure you print the worksheet and you freeze your items. So I'm going to go ahead and just click preview. And I have unposted items. So you're going to get this warning. So let me just go in and update these. And if, again, when you get that warning, that's when you're going to have to go to your team and let them know that they need to update things. Because as you well know, a lot of times you'll tell people everything needs to be updated, and they'll say, yeah, everything is updated. And then when you go to close something, you find out, it's really not updated. So I'm just going to run through these very quickly.
And let's take a look now and see if we have anything else that may be unposted that we're not aware of. Okay. All right, so everything has been posted. This is what your physical count worksheet is going to look like. And if your items are FIFO, LIFO, standard, or average cost, it's going to list each item, and then it just has an area where you can put in the quantity counted. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and as you can see, this particular item, the valuation is lot, so it has the lot numbers listed. So you're going to do a count by lot number. Let's see if I have any serial numbers listed. Looks like I got a lot of lot numbers in this demo data. So yeah, we won't keep running through this, but again, you can kind of see if it's a lot or a serial number. If it's a serialized item, it's going to say serial number. It's going to have the individual serial number and then a lot, and then have you do that count there as well. So when your warehouse folks are doing that count, it's going to be important that they don't just go, yes, we have, you know, 5 of these desk files. They need to literally say, we have one of this one, we have one of this one, and so forth. You can break this worksheet out by warehouse. You can break it out by bin location if you need to. But it is going to be an inventory in item number order based on the way that I ran it. So your team is going to take these worksheets, and they're going to go out to the warehouse. They're going to do their counts, and then they're just going to write in the numbers in each of these fields of how many they've counted. You'll notice that it doesn't show how many that you think you have on hand, so they can't go, yeah, it looks like we have 10, that they physically need to count them. If you have multiple people doing it, and it's important to know who's doing it in case you have someone that maybe is not doing their due diligence with the count, you can have them put their initials. And again, you may be in a situation where it may take a couple of days to do your physical count. That's fine. Again, because you have frozen those items, your business can continue. So you can still be selling, you can still be purchasing. It's not going to affect anything. So after you have printed the worksheet, and after you have completed your inventory, what your next step is going to be is you're going to go to physical count entry. So the warehouse staff, they're going to bring these sheets to someone, and then whoever they bring those to, they're going to start doing the physical count entry. And the physical count entry does want you to do it basically by warehouse. So I'm going to just pick warehouse 0. I think we had items on there. And I'm going to go to my lines tab. And this is every item that's in warehouse 0 that was frozen, obviously. And it is going to show me what Sage thinks the quantity on hand is. And then you need to enter the physical count. So here is where you need to be really, really careful, because every year we get kind of a panic call from someone that calls and says, I tried to do a physical count and now all my inventory says is 0. Or, you know, I did a physical count, but I did something wrong and I have this huge adjustment. What did I do wrong? You need to fill in the appropriate number that was counted. So this item number 1, if on your worksheet they truly counted 2,679. You must enter that number here, okay? If you leave that at 0, thinking this column is not the difference. So if you left this at 0, thinking, well, this is the quantity on hand, so there's no difference. When you update this, it is going to make your quantity on hand 0, and it's going to remove all 2,679 from your inventory. So you need to fill in a number. On this particular one, let's say they counted 72 instead of 73. You would put in 72. And you're going to go through and fill in all of these blanks, every single one of them, okay? At the point that you do that, and I'm not going to enter all of these in just for the purpose of today. Once you have all of these filled in and you accept it, what I would do, actually I should have done that from the other screen, but you can still go back and do it here. I would print then you're going to print the variance register. And what that variance register is going to show you is how your physical count is going to impact your inventory and your GL. And you're going to notice, because I left all of those remaining items at 0, you're going to see what that would do to my inventory. So I'm going to click Proceed. And so you can see with this first item, and make this a little bigger for you guys. So you can see this is the first item that I did. It shows me the unit of measure. It shows me the quantity that it was showing on hand. It shows me the number that I entered on my physical count, and it shows me whether I was over or short. This next item I listed, the quantity on hand in inventory showed 73, but we physically only counted 72. So you can see that it shows that I'm short 1. That's the unit cost of the item. So it's going to be an impact on my inventory valuation, my total of $37.15. Everything else that I left at 0, it's basically thinking the quantity on hand was 86. They counted 0, so we're going to remove 86 from their inventory. So as you can tell, when you start getting to the bottom of this report, because I made this huge mistake, when I get to the bottom of this report, look at the impact it's going to have on my inventory. So at this point, when you realize what's happened, you can also take this register and print it. Do not update it, but you could print it and then compare it to your physical count worksheet to see if you've made any typos. So you can do that as well. But once you do this physical variance register and you exit out, if you've caught mistakes, when it says, do you want to update it, you want to say no. And what you immediately want to do is you want to go back to your physical count worksheet. You want to clear all the frozen items. So it's cleared the frozen items. You want to go back in and you can then just do a freeze only item, making sure that you made the same criteria selection as the first time, whether you're doing it for just a particular warehouse, a certain inventory cycle, and do that. And then you could go back into your physical count and then restart your count. The other thing that you can do is you can do this. Let me go back. Let me show you another thing that you could do.
If you find tons and tons of mistakes, I would just clear the whole thing out and start over. If you find one or two mistakes, so let me just do some numbers here. Okay, I'm going to click accept. We'll look at this variance register again very quickly. Okay, so let's say that when I'm looking at this variance register, I realize that the only mistake that I made was I made a typo here, and this really should be 86 and not 85. I can close out of this variance. Do I want to update it? No. I can go back to my physical count worksheet. My count is still there, and I can modify. Whoops. I can change this count, rerun my variance register, and if everything looks okay, then I can update it. At that point, that's where it's going to make adjustments to my inventory, and it is also going to make an entry to my general ledger. So you just want to be really careful with this area and making sure that you understand fully what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and just clear these frozen items as we talk about a couple of other things. What I would recommend is that whoever sets up your roles, your user IDs, and your role maintenance, you want to make sure that you are comfortable with who has access to get into this physical count worksheet. Because, as I said, probably at least once a year, someone will go in and do the either worksheet and freeze items, or they freeze the items and they don't really understand what they're doing because they don't really see any effect of that. And then maybe they go in and go print the physical count register. And by doing that, if they update it, it's going to zero out their entire inventory. And you cannot undo that process. So that takes me back to a comment that I don't believe I made earlier. But once you freeze that inventory and you're ready to start that physical count, I would strongly suggest that you have a good backup of your entire Sage 100, not just your inventory module, but your entire Sage 100, that should something bizarre like this happen, unfortunately, then you can do a restore and you're not having to re-enter all of your inventory, and it could just be a mess. So please, keep that in mind. Another thing that I will suggest to you is that if you know you're going to be doing an inventory, and maybe it's your first time, maybe some of you are a brand new implementation and it's the first time you've ever completed a physical count in Sage 100, reach out to our support team before you start your physical count. So maybe if you know that next weekend you're going to be doing a physical count, get in touch with our support team now. Let them know you're going to be doing a physical count. Run through, this is my understanding of the things that I need to do. Is there anything else I need to be considering? Is there anything that I'm missing? Just so that you can cover all of your bases. It's better to talk to us in advance and plan properly than to call in a panic first thing Monday morning. No, you're afraid to let anybody in the organization work in the system because of inventory. And it's just like anything else, it's much better to be proactive when you're doing that. So that takes us through the physical count. And one thing I did fail to mention, I apologize, When I talked about earlier that all of the transactions have to be updated, like in sales order or purchase order, I failed to mention some of you may actually do, if you don't use sales order or purchase order, you may use the transaction entry feature in inventory. So you also have to make sure that those are updated. But again, you saw when I ran through my scenario, if you have things that are not updated, it's going to give you a warning. So it would include these inventory transactions on that warning as well. But that is another area where you may have unposted transactions. So that pretty much takes us through physical count. Again, if you do card count entry, I would encourage you to go look at the last webinar recording we did for inventory, because it does specifically walk you through card count. And I don't remember how many versions back that was added to Sage. Honestly, I apologize. I don't remember how many years ago that was. So if you're on a much older version of Sage, you may not have that feature. So if you don't have that feature and you need it, you certainly need to talk with us about getting an upgrade. And speaking of upgrades in general, you know, it's very important that you stay on a current version because we're going to be approaching year end. If you're on an unsupported version, you definitely need to be reaching out to our team now so that we can talk about how that may impact year end, not inventory related, but other things such as W-2s, if you do payroll, if there's any changes that you need that you're not going to be able to get because you're on an unsupported version, anything related to 1099s like the 1099 NEC that was added in the fiscal the year of 2020. So it's very important that you are taking advantage of all of the features within Sage 100 and also making sure that you are on a supported version. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about in inventory, there are lots of utilities that you can run. And some of these are if you're wanting to change your valuation method, various types of things you can do in here. I'm going to kind of give you a warning other than if you just want to delete or change some items or you're wanting to purge out some of your old item history. If you're wanting to do anything that's going to be affecting your tiers, very important if you're wanting to change your valuation method, there are things that you need to make sure that you do or you don't do accounting-wise when you're making a big decision like that. So please, before you get into any of those utilities, give our support team a call and we will be glad to advise you and walk you through the proper process and also provide you with a list of do's and don'ts or pros and cons when you're making that decision. Again, before you do any utility in inventory or anywhere within Sage where it's going to change data, it's going to purge history, it's going to merge history or merge records, please make sure that you have a good backup before you do that. Because once you run these utilities, you can't unrun them. So what is done is done. So it'll be easier if you have a good backup. And again, you want a good backup of everything, not just the module you're working in. Because as you know, most modules integrate with 1, 2, or 3 other modules in Sage. So just because you back up your inventory and you have an issue, it doesn't mean that it might not have some type of effect on your sales order or your purchase order module or GL. So just kind of take that into consideration. Also, it affects your AR, you know, if it's sales order related. So just keep all of that in mind. And if you have any questions that you haven't submitted during the Q&A that you think about after the fact, or maybe you're like, well, we are getting ready to do an inventory. I want to go ahead and talk to someone now. If you will email our client care manager and her name is Garen Stout, and her email address is gstout@oasisky.com. She will be glad to get your issue to the right person, and someone will be in touch. Garen is also the person that you need to reach to if you are interested in upgrading your Sage 100. Please get in touch with her and let her know that you're interested in an upgrade, and she will provide you with all of the documentation, talk about our pre-upgrade analysis process. She will get you the specs and requirements on the supported platform matrix, and we can get that process started for you. So thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate your time. So we will be ending the session now. Thank you.